I bring you greetings from Jesus Christ and Blessed Mary, a holy evening to all you dear children listening to Radio Domina Nostra. We are about to conclude this beautiful feast of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary into heaven. I don't know how you have spent it, but I am having a wonderful time because today we celebrated the Easter of Mary, so I didn't want to leave you in peace this evening either. In the meantime, I greet the pilgrims present here at Little Nazareth, even if not in large numbers. Let's say dominant from a couple of regions in Italy, Lombardy, as we mentioned, Molise, Abruzzo, and Emilia-Romagna, but the Sicilians who come from various places really take the lead. It was a lovely day, although I would say it was quite warm, perhaps warmer than the other days lately. Today, this afternoon, it was really sweltering, as they say. First of all, I wanted to thank you for the response regarding the homily I posted on Radio Domina Nostra. I just saw earlier on the Feast of the Assumption more than 4,000. Over 4,000 views. In short, these are things that encourage. And then also the thanks for the homily. And then, especially in the afternoon, we experienced this moment of grace. They also expressed a couple of things. The joy of being able to pray in the afternoon of the Assumption before Jesus Christ. And this Radio Domina does it. That is, it reaches you at home to help you pray in the right way, because it wouldn't make any sense to pray to the Lord if you are in the false church. So, this evening, we were meant to talk, as you know, to do the final episode from my book, Mary and the Antichrist, for a theological reading of the final fulfillment. But the Antichrist can wait. The Antichrist can still wait, because tonight, when I scheduled this episode last Sunday, I was a bit like that because of it. Indeed, tonight the location is very beautiful. I was joking that it seems almost complete as presented. Nothing there. This is the part that you see and is less dusty. This here, at most, is the most beautiful part we can show you. I have 4 pairs of summer shoes every evening, then every morning. I have to clean. I won't even tell you. But it looks very beautiful like this because what you see in the background is the Madonna who had a small Nazareth, and this is the center, as you know, or to Mary, of spirituality and prayer. Little Nazareth, Hail Mary. So I said I had planned this last episode from my book, Mary and the Antichrist, but we can postpone it to next Thursday, God willing, so we can wrap up more or less for the summer. In September, we will start other books. I would like to announce that I will be picking up my book on the Apocalypse again. I had commented on it, and then I had stopped. We'll start over because the Apocalypse, as you know, I've mentioned before, the most substantial book I've written is that one, The Symphony of the Lamb. Symphony, because the Apocalypse is like music, the Lamb's the lead. So I thought we should take it up again and start commenting on it anew. It should accompany us more or less until Lent, more or less. And at the same time, since we are also finishing church, Where Are You Going? And we are slowly heading towards the Christmas festivities, the next major celebrations, I would like to revisit this as we have always done it hastily. I still have ideas in hand on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the Apocalypse and the Incarnation, so the Gospels of the childhood, to delve into them, because the teachings are truly always numerous. Instead, this evening, which is the Feast of the Assumption, I thought that since we have talked about Valtorta, we have read the texts of Valtorta on the Assumption of Mary into heaven, and then we read, if you remember, the Roman transit of Mary from the 6th century. This evening I will focus on CATERINA EMMERICK and Maria d'Agreda, as they recount the transit of Mary. I would like to start with CATERINA EMMERICK, even though chronologically she comes later, because Maria d'Agreda is from the 1600s, and instead CATERINA EMMERICK is more than a century later. But I start with her, because Emmerick's account regarding the apparition of the Virgin Mary's transition is simply embarrassing. I don't want to hide my embarrassment from you, so I'll tell you straight away. Been paying attention? And I'm not mistaken. Valtorta recounts that the Madonna went to heaven from Jerusalem, right? Remember? Doesn't it say from Jerusalem, or does it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that she says from Jerusalem, while for Catherine Emmerich, the Virgin Mary left from Ephesus. How do we do? It becomes even more intense if you think that Emmerich was not well regarded by Maria Valtorta. It wasn't her fault. They probably spoke ill of her. She even wrote a book. She wrote some things against Emmerich, saying, "Look, here, Valtorta, see, she makes this up. It's wrong. I have the book at home, very well hidden, though, because it's unpleasant." But I must also tell you another thing now, that Emmerich, when she speaks of the life of the Madonna in Ephesus, does not just recount it, she provides the details. So she says the house was like this, on this hill here, which overlooked the city. It's called Ephesus, and so on and so forth. Then a French priest, after hundreds, no less, a few years, financed the archaeological excavations in Ephesus to find the so-called House of Mary. They found it. They found the house. They found archaeological remains from the 1st century after Christ, and they discovered them in the arrangement that Catherine Emmerich had provided. The thing, your silence confirms it, becomes even more so, especially because Valtorta contested, what many assert, the fact that Caterina Emmerich saw, but in reality it was Clemens Brentano who wrote, as he was a poet, a man of letters, so it seems that he wrote the things, not Emmerich. In fact, Emmerich said where the house was, and today there is the Marian sanctuary there. We'll go there soon. How do we solve this? We'll see. In the meantime, let's read the text about the passing of Mary. Emmerich calls it the transition in Catherine Emmerich. So this is the dictation from the 12th of August, 1821. I see 12 people celebrating the Holy Mass near the bed of the Blessed Virgin. Kneeling beside her bedside is a woman who helps Mary to rise now and then. Of course, there are these 12 who were with me, these 12 apostles. By the bed of the holy dying woman, there was the cross. That is, the Madonna had made a cross. The Madonna had lived. Here we have very specific details. 14 years and 2 months after the ascension of Christ to heaven. So one can do the calculations, help me out here, given my mathematical skills. If the Madonna, let's say, had been 14 years old when she conceived Jesus, plus 33 years ago, 61, 61. Actually, as more or less non-tradition speaks of 62 to 63 years. There is a lovely prayer practice, I mentioned this for the Sicilians, of the Madonna di Trapani, which is known throughout Sicily anyway, a beautiful statue of the Madonna with origins that seem miraculous, supernatural. Anyway, there exists a 15 to the Madonna di Trapani, which is called the Assunta, that includes 63 prayers, which would correspond to the age at which the Virgin Mary died. So, if you notice, If we want to think that instead of being 14, she could have been at most 15 or 16, we're there. Well, the Madonna lived on earth until she was around 62, 63, at most 65 years old. And she lived without Jesus after Jesus ascended to heaven for 14 years and 2 months. 14 years and 2 months. Moreover, the seer says that when she fell asleep, she would softly and reverently sing some hymns about the Mother of God, which were the ones she heard being spoken by the apostles around the bed. These hymns are kept, preserved. When she woke up the next morning and I asked her, this is Clemens and Brentano writing, what she had been singing, she replied, still half asleep, I went in procession with that lady. In the evening I followed in a vision 2 companions of the Most Holy Mary. We made the Stations of the Cross behind the house of Ephesus. This is what impressed me the most. I was about to arrive one day at the house of Ephesus, the house of Mary Ephesus, because I was on Patmos, the island. Of the Greek archipelago, it was a short distance, just a stone's throw, but it was no longer possible after that. It was the time of the Islamic State, Turkey. I preferred to avoid a solitary priest. However, what struck me the most is that Emmerich says that behind the house, the Madonna had built a Stations of the Cross. Did you know that in the archaeological excavations they found something similar? Incredible. I find this detail here, if not the others, but this is truly incredible. I had joined them, says Emmerich, in silence. That is, there were 2 women in Mary's house who were doing the Stations of the Cross behind the house. Here the apostles rushed from different parts of the world to Ephesus to gather around the bedside of the Most Holy Mary. The first striking detail is that, according to Emmerich, she does not die in Jerusalem, but the Virgin Mary dies in Ephesus. And the apostles do not gather in Jerusalem, as the apocryphal account of Mary's passing from the 6th century states, but in Ephesus. They were informed by the angels in the regions where they were establishing the Church of Christ, and I find this a measured theme. No visions, no apparitions, no translations with clouds, as I mentioned the other day. I felt a bit embarrassed that the apostles would arrive on the clouds of heaven, but I find it reasonable that angels can inform us. I experience this. I think you do too. Angels speak to us in dreams or in our hearts. They make us feel things. They transmit the light of God to us. So it is plausible that at the moment the Virgin Mary was dying, the apostles were informed of these matters by their guardian angels or specific angels and set out on their journey. They had erected small churches to announce the gospel in the pagan areas of the world. I have seen many of these primitive churches built with intertwined branches and layers of mud. Everyone had the same circular shape at the back as Mary's house in Ephesus. In these places of worship, there was an altar where the holy sacrifice was offered. I believe the apostles could not have reached Ephesus without the mysterious assistance of the heavenly realm. God wanted them to go there, Queen of the Apostles. I have seen them pass through human crowds several times, without being noticed. They were not even aware of enjoying this protection, although they performed miracles among the pagan and savage peoples. Peter and Matthew were near Antioch. Andrea, who had suffered persecution in Jerusalem, was not far from them. I saw a bright figure approaching Peter and waking him up. He took him by the hand and told him he had to hurry to the Mother of God. Peter, who was weakened by life and age, he sat down to listen carefully to the words of the angel. As soon as he disappeared, the apostle got up, put on his belt and cloak, took his staff, and set off. Thaddeus, Jesus' cousin, Jude Thaddeus, and Lord the Zealot, who had meanwhile received the summons in Persia, met Peter, and together they went to the bedside of the Madonna. I also saw Thomas. He was in the heart of India, farther than anyone from Ephesus. He was the farthest from everyone, Thomas. And it is true that he went to India, so much so that there is a place where tradition venerates him in India, as if he had passed right through there. Always of Thomas, says Emmerich, I saw him in a bamboo hut, deep in prayer. Then I saw him sailing on a fragile little boat with a Tartar disciple he had converted. Thomas arrived late, at the bedside of the Virgin. He only got there after Mary's death. He had pushed himself for his mission all the way to Russia, crossing through China and arriving in Tartary. He'd gone to India. The apostle met his end in martyrdom. He was pierced by a spear in India. A stone on which he had prayed every day bore the marks of his knees. And this is found there. At the time when the Madonna was about to leave the world, Giovanni was residing in Jericho, but he often went to Ephesus. Bartolomeo was to the west of the Red Sea, in Asia. He was a handsome man, quite skilled, with fair skin and a high forehead. Bartolomeo talk. He is quoting where they were, what they were doing, and what these apostles were like when they were gathered for the death of the Madonna. Black, curly hair, a short curly black beard, divided into two tufts. Bartolomeo had just converted the king and his entire family when he was murdered by a brother of the king who had become a Christian. Well, murdered, he was skinned alive. I did not see where James the Lesson was. Yeah, because as you know, there were two apostles named James, James the son of Zebedee, the brother of John, and James the Less, the brother of Judas, who was also a cousin of Jesus. But why does he mention the lesser and not the greater? Who knows? No, someone among you had actually died, as he was the first apostle to die, so he was no longer alive. That's why he isn't mentioned. James the Less, on the other hand, is said to have been very handsome and bore a great resemblance to our Lord, which is why he was called by all the disciples the brother of Jesus. Paul. He was not called because he had no ties of kinship or friendship with the Holy Family. Now, the moment of the passing and the entrustment of the relics of the Most Holy Mary arrives. I saw the handmaid of the Virgin, distressed by sorrow, wandering in the house where the deepest sadness reigned. Death was visibly approaching the Madonna. She rested on her bed, anxiously awaiting to reunite with her son. Everyone says this. Mystics, theologians. The Virgin Mary has died, and it's important to emphasize this because she too was a daughter of Adam, unredeemed, but she was a woman, that is a creature, so she experienced death. The veil that covered her head was raised on her forehead, and she lowered it over her face when speaking to men. Her hands were also uncovered only when she was alone. For all this time, she continued to feed only on a few spoonfuls of yellow juice. What's that? Mango? Smoothie? I don't know. Anna? I don't know. The Madonna only ate this stuff. As evening approached, the Holy Virgin, in accordance with Jesus' will, prepared to bid farewell and bless the apostles, the disciples, and the women. I saw her sitting on the bed, her face very pale. Her room was open on all sides. The Most Holy Mary prayed, then blessed each apostle separately by touching their hands. Finally, she spoke to them all together. Then she, here there is a perfect coincidence with Valtorta, gave Giovanni the instructions to take for her body, entrusting him to divide her garments between the maid and a young girl who often was close to her. I saw Peter approaching her with a roll of paper to write on. Then the Holy Virgin pointed with her finger at a large wardrobe containing her garments. Then I was able to see them and examine them all, deeply understanding the spiritual meanings contained within them. With the men having withdrawn to the front of the house, the women came to kneel before Mary's bed, to receive her blessing in turn. I saw the Holy Virgin embrace one of the pious women who was leaning over her. Peter, in a magnificent priestly vestment, celebrated the Holy Mass. This is not implausible at the Mass in Frascopani if it had already spread. So St. Peter, who is the head of the apostles, while the Virgin Mary is in bed, preparing for her transition, celebrates the Holy Mass. Peter had just begun the ceremony when I saw Philip arrive coming from Egypt, the other apostle, and he rushed straight to the bedside of the Mother of God to receive her blessing. Meanwhile, Peter completed the ceremony by consecrating and receiving the body of the Lord himself. He had distributed it to the apostles, the disciples, and all the faithful present there. Mary could not see the altar, but as long as the ceremony lasted, she remained seated on her bed, lost in meditation. I saw that Peter, after giving the most holy sacrament to all the apostles, went to the Virgin to give her the Eucharistic bread one last time and the final anointing. The final farewell ceremony for the Madonna then took place. All the apostles accompanied Peter in a solemn procession. Jude Thaddeus led the procession with the censer. Peter followed with the Eucharist in the vessel shaped like a cross. Then came John, holding a plate with the chalice containing the precious blood and some boxes. The chalice was similar to that of the Last Supper. The handmaid of the Most Holy Mary had brought to the bed of the Madonna the table designated as an altar, covered with liturgical cloths, on which there were lights and lit candlesticks. The Virgin, without uttering a word, continued to gaze upwards, enraptured in deep ecstasy. She was extremely pale and motionless. Peter anointed her with holy oils on her face, hands, feet, and side, where her garment had an opening, so there was no need for her to be uncovered. Finally, he gave her the Holy Communion. Meanwhile, the apostles were quietly reciting their prayers. At that moment, I saw a glow of heavenly light enveloping Mary. Envelop her entirely and enter her body. Then the Virgin fell into a deep ecstasy. Only a few women had remained with her because the apostles had returned to the altar. Later, the latter, along with the disciples, returned around Mary's bed to pray. I had, meanwhile, another wonderful vision, and here it recalls Valtorta in many ways. The ceiling of the room of the Madonna no longer existed. Nice this, because everyone says so. The roof no longer exists, because the Madonna must be taken to heaven. And from the open sky descended numerous figures of angels identical to Valtorta. Among them, a radiant path emerged that led straight to heaven. Then I saw the Madonna extend her arms towards that path. Immediately, 2 choirs of angels on shining clouds enveloped her soul, separating it from the body, which fell back lifeless onto the bed with its arms crossed over the chest. Valtorta says the same. Her most holy soul followed, accompanied by numerous angelic choirs, ascending to paradise and rising to the throne of the adorable Trinity. All the souls of the ancient patriarchs came to meet her with great reverence. I saw among them Joachim, Anna, Joseph, Elizabeth, Mary, and John the Baptist. All family matters. Then I also saw Jesus, who, welcoming her with his divine love, placed a scepter in her hands and showed her the earth beneath her as if to confer upon her a special power. Thus, I saw the Madonna enter into heavenly glory, while everything that was on earth around her vanished, from my sight. Perhaps Peter, John, and some disciples had the same vision because they could not take their eyes off the sky. Most of them were kneeling as they saw the angels taking the soul of the Madonna. Pay attention to this detail. We have mentioned it several times. Koimesis, analepsis, that is, dormition, assumption, these are two different moments. First, the Madonna dies, and the angels come to take her. This is the tradition. They come to take the soul, just as will happen to us, just as will happen to us. What is the difference between us and the Madonna? When we die, our soul is dead. It will be taken and brought before God. The body returns to the earth, and we reclaim it, as the Church teaches us in the final resurrection. Instead, the Madonna died, and the angels came to take her, just as they will for us, and they took her to heaven. The body remained there, and after 3 days, the angels returned to take the body and reunite it. You said? It seems clear to me. We must pray that our passage is accompanied by angels. I remember when I read the story of that friar in hell in the Divine Comedy, who, when he died, St. Francis of Assisi came to him because he had become a Franciscan friar after a life of sin, but it was all just a performance. At a certain point, St. Francis arrives because the friar is dying, and his brother comes with the angels to take him. But just as he is about to take him, as he is dying, the devil arrives and says, "I'm sorry, he's mine. You can't take him to heaven because he did this, this, and this, and hasn't confessed it." Because here the issue isn't just committing the sin, the serious matter is not going to confess it. Look, there are people who think they can even fool the Lord, and they go to confess. And the biggest sins, since they are ashamed and do not want to lose the esteem of the priest, and this is absolute nonsense because the priest at that moment is a father of mercy, they do not mention the sin. Let's get back to Mary. Well, that was the moment when the Most Holy Mary, more beautiful than ever, and just imagine, ascended to heaven, followed by many souls freed from purgatory, even today, on the anniversary of her death. I saw numerous souls rising to heaven. It should be the 13th of August, and the 13th of August is also an important date because it is officially the day of Mary's death, and then the 15th is the day of the Assumption. When the Holy Virgin left the holy body, it was the very hour when Jesus was taken up, the 6th hour and the 9th hour, that is, 3 in the afternoon. Therefore, according to this source from Catherine Emmerich, the Madonna would have died at 3 in the afternoon. I saw the women place a blanket over the holy body. The apostles and the disciples prostrated themselves at the front of the house. I saw Matthew and Andrew go to the last station of Mary's Way of the Cross, that is, to the cavity that represented Christ's tomb. They found this sort of gallery incredible. They found it just as Emmerich described. They enlarged the pit to lay the body of the Holy Virgin to rest in this place. Then they prepared the tomb there, in Ephesus, behind the house where the Madonna had lived. The cave of the tomb was not as spacious as that of Christ. A man of average height could barely stand upright without bending. Many women arrived to finally prepare the holy body of Andrew of God for burial. They used torches as it was already dusk to illuminate the operation. The Madonna was covered only with a long woolen shirt. They cut off her beautiful locks to keep them as relics. I saw 2 women washing the holy remains. I believe they had a sponge in their hands. With respectful fear, I personally like this seemingly crude aspect because it speaks of a realism, you see, of the corpse of Mary. With respectful fear and reverence, the body was completely washed. Each part, after being washed, was immediately covered. The holy body remained always covered, and the women took absolute care never to reveal the slightest nudity. Now I skip to the moment when she is taken to the tomb, and with the apostles' tears, they closed the entrance of the tomb. It was all over. The entrance he was concealed by a large hedge, intertwined with various lush shrubs, some flowering and some laden with berries. They finally let the water from a nearby spring flow at the foot of the hedge. Now to conclude, let's come to the moment when the Assumption into heaven takes place. Here, while some apostles and numerous holy women were absorbed in prayer and singing sacred hymns in the garden before the hidden cave, I suddenly saw a glory formed by 3 choirs of angels and good souls surrounding an apparition, Jesus Christ. This is an undeniable fact. The analepsis, that is, the Assumption of Mary into heaven, is a direct act of Jesus. It is Jesus who comes to take the body of his mother. Why? Because he lived in that body. It is the Ark of the New Covenant, the dwelling of God. The angelic choirs were made up of children. Everything was indistinct as it appeared only in a great form of light. I saw, however, that the soul, do you remember the soul of the Madonna in heaven, of the Holy Virgin following Jesus, descending with the sun down the rock of the tomb, and immediately afterwards coming out of the tomb with her own shining body? I've got to tell you something, then we'll wrap up. You look tired. What I would like to tell you is something important. Dear flowers, look, this is the dogma of faith. I say this because we are unfortunately affected by a culture of radical materialism, believing that the Virgin Mary, with her soul, descends from heaven with Jesus, enters the tomb and emerges with her body, is a dogma of faith. Naturally, Pope Pius XII does not specify the manner for obvious reasons, but the dogma states that the Virgin Mary is in heaven in both soul and body. So the body, in one way, as CATERINA EMMERICK describes it, or in another way, as Valtorta tells it differently, nonetheless, the body of Mary does not decay underground and is not found on earth. You see, most of the clergy, the praetorians, bishops, cardinals, they don't believe it. They can't bring themselves to believe that the Virgin Mary is truly a priest. This also leads us, even if we had time, to consider that we must respect our bodies. When I was in the parish, I fought a somewhat lost battle with the women in summer about respect for their bodies, especially in the house of God, because we all feel the heat, and it affects men too, if women dress inappropriately. With this miracle, here then, is the way to ascend with the Lord and all the angelic glory towards the heavenly Jerusalem. Then every brilliance vanished, and the silent starry sky closed back over the earth. With this miracle, the holy body of the Mother of God was taken up into heaven. You see, they are indeed celebrating. This time it fits perfectly. Well, I wanted to tell you one last thing, and that is that the apostles feel a bit upset that the Madonna is leaving as well. They have a moment of confusion, it must be said. But what do you want? It's God's design coming to fruition, and John is the first to notice that the Madonna is not in the tomb. Giovanni yelled, "Come! Look at the miracle! The holy body is no more." John calls everyone else, and they all come to check that the body of the Madonna is no longer inside the tomb. This was the last aspect I wanted to mention, and Emmerich recounts a prayer with which we also conclude, said to have been taught to Saint Alphonsus Maria de Liguori and included in this work. Let's wrap up. Most Holy Immaculate Virgin, and my dear Mary, you are the mother of my Lord, the Queen of the world, the advocate, the hope, the refuge of sinners. The most miserable of all, I turn to you. O great Queen, I venerate you and thank you for the graces you have bestowed upon me so far, and especially for freeing me from the hell I have deserved so many times. I love you, most gracious lady, and I am so filled with love for you that I promise to always serve you and to do everything I can so that others may love you too. O Mother of Mercy, I place all my hopes in you, all my salvation. I beg you, accept me as your servant, and welcome me under your mantle. And since you are so powerful with God, free me from all temptations or grant me the strength to overcome them until death. Do not leave me until you see me safe in heaven, namely the Assumption, to bless you and to sing your mercies for all eternity. So I hope, and so it shall be. We do not have time to read the account of Mary of Agreda or Mary of Greada in the mystical city of God, but we will undoubtedly have the chance to catch up on it. Let's conclude this beautiful celebration this evening with the blessing, Madonna Assumed. I am very happy about this day. I think you are too. I am certain of it. A joy inside that bursts forth like these fireworks to say that this joy is within us and upon all of you. I invoke the blessing of the Lord through the assumed Madonna in heaven. We also prepare ourselves for the Immaculate Heart of Mary on the 8th of August. In the name of John the Baptist, Philip, and the Holy Spirit, Amen. Praise be to Jesus Christ and onward.